Hey, hey. Happy Wednesday. I think we're at Wednesday. I'm just going to wait a few more moments and then we will get started. First off, I want to thank everyone who has been so generous to contribute to my Cash App. Let me do the roll call now before I forget. Um, I saw one come through. Okay, let me pull it up if I can figure out how to do that. I don't want to butcher this name, but I think it's Shalante McGee. Thank you so much for the Cash App. I appreciate you. Um, Another one that I don't want to butcher, Anise. I think Anise Test 316. Thank you for the Cash App. Good old Bobby, he's literally everywhere all the time. Again, I appreciate the Cash App and the support. Also, if any of you guys want to show love or support, you can find me on Cash App or Venmo, ChezCharde. So we're just going to get started. There's actually a couple of things I wanted to talk about today. So also, if you're on here, please get the likes up, tag anybody on this conversation you think may find it helpful. So first things first, I more want to get your guys' opinion on this because I've seen a lot of back and forth about this particular subject, and that is whether or not women should compete with men. Um, some of you guys may or may not know. I know. I think Jeannie Meyer recently shared her, I guess, her pregnancy photos. I haven't seen like the whole photo shoot, but she's openly talked about the fact that she got married, as many of us know, and then she recently got pregnant. From Jeezy, who's a high value black man, and of course, anything related to that relationship is always getting all kinds of play on YouTube, Black YouTube, especially among the female content creators. And so I've heard all kinds of different stuff, all kinds of different opinions on this. But one common narrative I hear, especially related to quote unquote high value or successful black men, is that it's widely accepted now that these men, the more successful they are, or just the more successful men in general, they have other women who are willing to compete with them. And if black women are not willing to compete in these spaces for high value or successful black men, then Becky might, or Maylene, she might. And we've heard this time and time again on Kevin Samuels, but this topic came up. This topic came up again when she posted her recent that she's expecting and her baby. And like I said, I heard all kinds of different stuff. And so I'm more curious to hear from some of you guys whether or not you think women in particular should compete for men that they want, if black women should compete for black men, for successful men. I want to hear from you guys, and so we can kind of keep that conversation going. For those of you guys who just hopped on, please get the likes up. We're talking about a few different things, but I want to hear from you. What do you think? Should women compete for men? Should women compete for men? I will be completely honest and say that is not anything of what I heard coming up. I heard, if anything, the men should be competing for you. The man that wants you is going to find you. Man who finds a good wife finds a good thing. And just the whole narrative is just like, no, you should never put out for a man. If anything, he should put out for you. And the right man is going to do that. And so I was never taught that. And I know tons and tons of women who very much have that idea where it's just like, no, I'm not going to compete for a man. That's his job. That's his role. The man is the pursuer. The man is the hunter. And so I actually was listening to O'Shea Duke Jackson's video a little bit earlier today when he addressed this specifically, where he was like, these high value men, we're going to see more of this trend of what it seems to be successful black men who are paired up with women of other communities. And some of this could boil down to, are you willing to compete? Women, are you willing to compete for the men that you want? So I want to hear from you. Let me know. Leave your comments in the comment section. Do you think women should compete for men? Should women compete especially for the men that they think are valuable, for high value men? Should black women compete for black men? I want to hear from you. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. As Ed sees some comments, I don't think Jeannie Mai is too old to be with a man like Jeezy. I agree. Me personally, I'm happy for them. I mean, without me knowing, obviously, I don't know their relationship. I don't live with them. I can only speculate, but I'm happy for them. They look like they're happy, and she seems like she made a really good decision. Just considering the different challenges she'd had previously. I know she'd had a failed marriage and talked about how in her own words, her own feminist views got in the way of the success of her marriage. And so I'm happy for her growing and making a decision that she felt like was best for her. I know there's many women who do not share that sentiment and feel like, Jeezy sold out, for like, she's taking advantage of a black man, or, he's just picking up her leftovers. I've heard all kinds of stuff, but for me, I'm happy for them. I don't have any issues with it. So I hear, don't you think Jeannie Mai is too old to have children? Not necessarily. I know women, in their 40s who've had children. I think also, and I don't want to go into this too deeply, but I also think in other cultures, non-Western cultures, it's a lot more common to see women having children, young and way past what may be considered, what do they call it? Geriatric pregnancy. I think geriatric pregnancy starts at 40. I literally just talked to my friend about this not too long ago, who actually had a baby in her 40s. I think she's now 41, but she's like, yeah, that's when geriatric pregnancy begins at 40. So yeah, I mean, okay, of course there's always going to be best practices, but at the end of the day, it is up to the woman. Jeannie Mai also seems to be in really good health, and she seems like she takes care of herself. So again, one can only speculate, but at the end of the day, I'm happy for her. So that's my opinion. But yeah, curious. Let me know what you guys think. Actually, let me drop this. If any of you guys want to call in, I'm open to it. I'm going to drop this in. Wait. Let me drop this in there. Oops. I'm having a technical issue right now. Oh, here it is. So if any of y'all want to call and let me know, I want to see, what do you think? Do you think black, or just women in general, do you think women should compete for the men? Should women compete for men? Should women compete for the men that they want? Or is it always the job of the man to pursue? It doesn't matter how successful. It doesn't matter, who he is. What do you think? Like I said, I'm hearing a lot of different thoughts on that. Okay, yeah, I'm seeing. Yeah, I heard about the statement on her and the dark meat. I'm not even gonna lie. I mean, I definitely have my thoughts about that. I don't know if I could have done it personally, because I think that was definitely suspect. But at the end of the day, Jeezy, he felt like he felt okay with it for whatever reason. So, it is what it is. That, like I said, but me personally, I heard that, I'm like, yeah, that's a little suspect. Like, that definitely speaks to some things, but we're going to see. We're going to find out. So what did I miss? Basically, up to this point, I'm just wanted to hear whether or not what you guys think. If you think women should actually be going after the men they want, because it's rough out there, and especially successful black men too, are starting to find that they have options. Successful men in general, they have options. They have women going after them, and that's just the nature of the game. And so that brings me to my point: should women compete for men? And as I said earlier, for those of you who guys just hopped on, I did not hear that growing up. I'm going to be honest. I heard man is supposed to pursue you. Man is supposed to come after you. You ain't supposed to put out on nothing. Like, that basically should be, the man's job. I've never heard about competing for no dude. Never. That was just not how I was raised. So that's why I'm just curious to hear what y'all have to say about this. Yeah, the black meat comment was bad. Maybe he took it as a compliment. I agree. I thought that was disrespectful. Now, granted, I didn't hear the whole conversation, and so I know certain things can be taken out of context, but I just can't think of any situation or any context where that comment would be acceptable. So like I said, I understand why he's gotten some hate and why there's been some issues, but like I said, at the end of the day, he made his decision. He's going to, he chose who he wants to choose. So it's like, okay, well, good luck. It says 95% of women compete for the top 10% of men. The other 5% are LGBTQ. So I think you're talking, well, I guess you didn't say the 80-20, but close to the 80-20 rule, which says 80% of women go after the top 20% of men. And there's different studies, to suggest that. But yeah, I've heard that before, that women in general go for like the top men. So, okay. So yeah, like I said, I want to hear from you. I have this link over here if y'all want to call in and share your thoughts. In the meantime, again, if you're on here, please get the likes up, tag anybody on here you think may find this interesting. Also, if you want to show some support, you can send in your super chat. Again, I want to thank those of you guys who have shown your love on CashApp. You can find me on CashApp and Venmo ChezCharde. Also, I want to move on really quick to the next subject. And like I said, y'all can come in at any time and we can kind of address whether or not you think should women compete for men. So I have the link over there for the StreamYard. But next thing I want to touch upon real quick is total change of gears is actually the economy in home ownership. I posted a poll, I think it was yesterday, just trying to get a pulse on whether or not millennials in particular find it reasonable for them to own a home in today's economy. I've heard a lot of talk about that, especially with COVID and things getting like rougher in the economy, people losing jobs, rent going up. And so I took a pulse on what was going on, and I was actually interested to see the results. I want to say it was actually, I can pull it up right here. I can get a full, let me find it instead of me just trying to make it up. Yeah, so over half of people said that they think that just through enough hard work and through saving up, doing whatever, that they can own a home. And so I wanted to bring up a recent report that I saw from Forbes magazine that kind of addresses this idea of home ownership and exactly how it's impacted millennials, and then what that actually means moving forward. Thank you, Snuggles, for the $5 super chat. Okay, I'm trying to understand. So I'm going to post it. Are you all afraid to go up? Is she known for biting people? Oh, I would like to see people hit the link, stop being scaredy cats. I play nice. I mean, if you listen to any of my videos or see me talk to anybody, I play nice. I think I'm one of the most non-threatening people out there on the YouTube space. That's just my personal opinion. So, Snuggles, you are always welcome to call in. Anybody is welcome to call in. This is a call-in show. I'm going to put the link back up. Let me see if I can find it. And I thank you. Appreciate the super chat. Dang, now I'm trying to find that link. Okay. So while we're waiting for some people to call in, I'm going to pull up this recent article from Forbes magazine that actually goes deeply into just this. The possibility of home ownership and how it is directly impacting millennials. Now, I will just say, living in the Bay Area, I've been in the Bay Area pretty much my entire life. If a starter home out in the Bay Area is $1 million, that's a starter home. That's a beginner, beginner condo really at this point, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom. Maybe you can get a condo for like, $600,000-$700,000 depending. But a starter home is $1 million. I remember a couple of years back, this is horrible, seeing them. They were building an entirely new housing complex for starter, young families, and it was literally walking distance from the jail. Like you could take a 5-minute walk from the jail, and it was starting at $1 million. So like that is what it means to try to get any kind of home in the Bay Area. You're starting at $1 million, and so I know countless couples out here who work in the Silicon Valley, both making 6 figures. Both working in their job, a couple of years, maybe a decade or even 2 in, and they're, sharing a 2-bedroom apartment, or they're maybe just trying to get in a condo. I know a lot of young families who, at least in this particular market, in this particular time in the Bay Area, are not having as much success finding homes, especially right now when, like I said, again, a starter home is $1 million. Now, you do have some companies like the Googles and the Facebooks of the world. Some of them, if you are an employee and you have worked a certain amount of time and you've put in a certain amount of blood, sweat, and tears, they will pay the down payment for your home. And I've heard of a few situations where that's been the case. And in those situations, people are able to get it. But that is few and far in between, at least out here. And like I said, more people, at least in this particular area, are finding it incredibly hard to own a home as young families, first time home buyers, etc. And that is, like I said, in the San Francisco Bay Area. That is not necessarily an indication of all areas. But that's why I wanted to bring this report and see what was actually happening in the economy, just so that we can kind of have an idea moving forward, especially in the light of the COVID and just the different things that are happening in the economy. So it says, okay, men, I'm seeing some comments. Yeah, men can be fetishized too. Why don't black men realize that? I don't know. Like I said, you can call in and talk about it. It seems like everybody's scared today. Maybe I have a bad reputation. He says, do you really play nice, or do you intellectually tell people, bless your heart? You know how those go. No, I really do play nice. Like as far as I can tell, I think I play nice. I mean, like I said, you can call in and find out. But I think I'm one of the most non-threatening people on the YouTube space. That is just my personal opinion. So I'm going to pull this article while people, find the courage to actually call in. And we're going to talk about it. And for those of you who just got hopped on, we're talking about a few different things. My first question is whether or not women should compete for men that they want. Is that necessary in this current space with, especially for high value men or successful men who have more options, who actually have women of other nationalities or cultures who may want them? Should black women compete for the black men they want? What do you think? I'd love to hear from you. Well, it looks like we actually have a caller. Let's see. Okay, well, before I pull up this report, we can get this caller, and I don't want you waiting too long. Okay, let me see. Hey there.
Hello, how you doing?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? I can hear you. I can hear you.
I'm having a hard time hearing you. I'm like, is that me or is that?
I can hear you clearly.
Let's see.
I can hear you clearly.
Okay, let me try this. Okay, can you hear me? I think I had the wrong setting. Let me try this again. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I can hear you. You know what? That was my fault. I think I accidentally hit the wrong setting, but I can hear you now. How are you doing? Happy Wednesday? Yeah, it's Wednesday.
Yeah, happy Wednesday. Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think? Should women compete for the men they want?
Well, so I'll comment on both topics.
Okay.
So I would say men and women have always competed for each other. Mm-hmm. Women, they make sure that they are, whether we talk about, 150 years ago, you had finishing schools and you had presentations and balls where they kind of presented themselves to court or whatever it might be, or coming outs or whatever they did. Those women, they made sure they positioned themselves to get whatever man was available in the 20th century. It was going to the finishing schools, then eventually to, educational institutions to put themselves around men who were going to be upwardly mobile. So this has always been a thing where women competed for men. Fair. And the men have always subsequently competed for the women too. So I think now, in terms of today's dynamic, when we start talking about the top tier of men, not even top 10%, you're saying the top, 1%. I mean, that's a whole different world that frankly, the average person on YouTube or in the world in general does not remotely understand in terms of how that works.
Exactly. And don't even have access. Honestly, don't even really have access to those people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm not, it's just to take your social cues from there is kind of probably misinformed, I would say, or not a good idea. So that's what I'm saying about that. So men and women kind of compete for each other. They put each other in each other's orbits. You put yourself, around, why did women want to go to Harvard? Because they wanted to snag a guy who might end up going to Harvard's law school, right? I mean, that's what, the Mrs. degree, right? Everyone, that's been an ongoing joke for 60, 70 years in this country. It's because it's a very real thing.
The Mrs. degree. I don't think I've heard that one, but that actually, I remember back in my high school, there was a lot of Mormons in the choir. I used to be in choir, and many of the women were very open about the fact that they were going to college to find a husband. Like, that was the expectation, was that by the time they graduated, they would have been married.
And I mean, I grew up. I'm in the Midwest. I'm in the Metro Detroit area.
Okay.
And And honestly, that's what I saw from people I went to high school with. Like, the parents were either trying to put the girls in the orbit of a couple guys who they deemed worthy,
Okay.
that they thought were good selections. And even the parents were maybe, the parents might have, on the guy side, might be trying to, put certain people in the guy's orbit. And not saying they were arranging the marriages, but there was definitely like, you can go off to college or do whatever you're going to do and find whoever you want. But just let you know, we have the family pick. Like, we have the family pick, and he or she is going to be at the barbecue on 4th of July. They're going to be, we're going to make sure this person's in the orbit. And you kind of know that this is like the baseline. And anything you bring back here has to meet this or beat it. So if it's not that, then, people are going to start looking at you sideways, and they're going to say, why are you going to do this? And not saying it's like pressured, but that's what I just noticed. Just being around people growing up, that's what they did. So then that kind of leads into the home ownership thing. I think obviously being in San Francisco, that's a very high cost of living area. I look at it as when you start talking about a select few markets in the country, San Francisco, New York City, Seattle, and maybe in kind of LA. LA, not all parts of the LA County are crazy expensive. I mean, from what I've seen or what I've been exposed to, basically to own a home, ultimately, obviously 2 people can get there faster than 1, which people have to just be ready to admit that.
Right.
Like,
that's facts.
And but basically, let me put it like here in Metro Detroit, which is kind of like a standard place, whether you're in Detroit, Houston, Atlanta, Tampa Bay, Miami, basically your standard place, right? The only places next level up would probably be like DC, Chicago, Austin, right?
Yeah.
So we know it's kind of tiered. The top of the tier is like it's like Seattle, those places. The next tier is going to be Austin, Chicago, DC, Denver. And then you have like everyone, then you have a standard market, like a dollar for dollar market. And then you have super cheap place like a Birmingham, Alabama, or something like that.
Right.
I'm not trying to be, if anyone's from Birmingham, I love Birmingham, worked there a few times. So,
yeah. Got family. I mean, if you're a Black person, you have family from down south. So it's like,
so basically I look at it as, to buy a home, you probably are going to need to save for about 3 years. So to put in perspective, you say you want to buy a $200,000 home. Yes, it's not going to be your dream home. It's going to be a lot of things you're probably not going to like about this house, right? Let's be honest, okay? But to get there, you need to save about $575 a month for 3 years to come up with like an $18,000 or $20,000 down payment.
Right.
That's the down payment plus closing costs, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
You have to pay PMI, all that stuff.
Uh-huh.
So a little bit about me. So I own several homes, me and my wife. So, and we're 37. So we're millennials, but we're on the top end. So I understand the millennials who might be 25 are like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But think about this. We got out of college in the Great Recession hit. So we got our teeth kicked in too. So we get it. So I would just say how do you save that money? Well, you're going to have to forego some stuff, such as you're not going to be able to go on trips. You're not going to be able to go out to eat. You can't go to the store and buy the nice stuff that you see your friends buying. So when you see your friends out shopping at, a luxury store or doing things like that, you have to say, I'm going to save that $575 this month and next month and next month. And you got to do that for 3 years.
Yeah, no, totally.
And then after 3 years, you can then buy a home. And then even when you buy that home, most likely, even if you're in a normal cost of living market, it's not going to be your dream home. It's just going to be a home, probably something that's 12 to 1,800 square feet, is relatively modern, built after 1970, 1980 or something like that. And, might have 1.5 baths, maybe 2 baths. You're not going to have a bedroom for every bath, right? It's not going to be something like that. And it's not going to be in the greatest school district. It's not going to be in the hottest neighborhood. That's just what the reality is. And people have to come to terms with. That's how it works. That's not how it worked for our parents. You're going to buy a place. You're going to live there for 5 to 10 years. Then you're going to probably save some more money. You're going to sell your house. You're going to move up into probably the home you actually really want. That's how it works. And that takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. But in that, I understand people want stuff now, and I can understand that. I mean, but it's just a process like anything. Just like it took you 4 years to get through college, you can't get a bachelor's degree nowadays you can get a bachelor's degree in 1 year. But just like it took you 3-4 years to graduate college, it's going to take you 3-4 years to probably save for a home. And you have to be consistent in order to meet that target. And you have to be realistic about what you can actually afford. Because, if you're saying, oh, I want the nicest house in the nicest neighborhood. So to put it in perspective, I charge people incredible amounts of rent in some of my middle-class suburbs. These are people who make probably enough money to afford a home in those neighborhoods that, that's maybe $250,000, $300,000, but they rather go ahead and pay me $1,800 a month in rent right now. When what they could do is they could stay in a place for $1,200. Mm-hmm. And now, of course, they have other things in play. Like, they want their kid, they have kids and they want them to be in a certain school district, and they have other competing priorities. So I get that. But, this is kind of what happens when you, don't pre-plan what plan you're going to execute, which means that, when you start a family, you and your spouse sit down and figure out how are you going to navigate getting to your financial goals. So, it's crazy stuff like deciding you're going to get married. When you get married, you say, okay, we're going to have a kid in X amount of time, doing stuff, quote unquote, in order kind of helps a lot, helps get you to where you want to go.
Okay. So I guess to sum up, your perspective is that women and men have always been competing for each other, for lack of a better term, just in their own way, in their own spaces. And then as far as home ownership, you think it's totally completely possible. It's just going to require sacrifice, just like any other thing in your life that you want. You can get there, but you have to, sacrifice to get there. So, yeah. Well, I appreciate your perspective. I want to open up the mic just in case anybody else wants to come in. But yeah, thank you for calling in.
Yep, no problem.
All right, you take care.
Mm-hmm.
So as you guys can see, I play nice. Yeah, for those of you who just hopped on, please get the likes up, tag everybody on here who you think might find this interesting. Also, I saw somebody ask where you could call in. I actually have the StreamYard link right there. So you can hit the link and that should take you right to this broadcast. And we're talking about actually a couple of things. First question is whether or not women should compete for the men that they want. Should Black women compete for the men that they want? Should Black women compete for Black men? Should women have the expectation of competing for high value men? What do you think? I'd love to hear from you. So that's one of the things that we're discussing. And then we're also talking a little bit about home ownership. I had made this poll yesterday, actually, based upon some articles that I saw coming recently about home ownership among the millennials. And just was curious everybody's thoughts and wanted to talk a little bit about that. So yeah, so while I'm waiting for somebody, it looks like I had somebody call in and then they dropped off, but no worries. I see everyone should get a home ASAP. Make sure you have, actually, let me put this up here. Thank you, David, for the $10 super chat. I appreciate it. I see everyone should get a home ASAP. Make sure you have good credit. Lifestyle desires will play a huge role in what you pay. The most common reason people retire is when the house is paid off. Fair. And thank you also for the super chat. Okay. And again, if you guys anybody wants to call in, here it is. So I'm waiting for somebody to call in. I'm going to now bring up this article. This was published by Forbes. So didn't make this up. This is just what Forbes is saying as far as whether or not how the prospect of home ownership in general is looking for millennials. I've actually thought it was really interesting. Let me see if I can pull it up. And, as I mentioned before, I do think it is also important to note that area really does play a huge example. A person trying to buy a home in a a person trying to buy a home in, a small town in Alabama is going to be a little bit different than buying a home in the suburbs of LA. Like, they say location, location, location. That's like one of the first things they tell you when it comes to real estate. And so area does make a huge difference. And of course, in a place in like the Bay Area, California, where just everything is high cost. I mean, you getting a small 1-bedroom apartment out here is going to cost you $2,500 easy, when that could get you a 3 or 4 bedroom home in another state. Location does obviously make a huge difference. So to the caller's earlier point, you can get a home. It may not always be the home that you want, especially if it's like your first home, but that can at least get you in the door. So, okay, let me actually pull this up. It said, how many people's homes does a bank own in America? Yeah, so I see this comment. Now, I will say this, because I've heard, some people, there is actually a difference between like, okay, this home is paid off versus, the bank owned this home and I'm paying the bank back until I get it. That is a big difference. Now, the percentage of, I think, the former of like, this home is completely paid off, all cash, that's obviously going to be a lot smaller than those who are actually, maybe in mortgages. But either way, I personally think, having a mortgage is better off than, paying rent. Because at least if you're paying rent, it's like that money you're never seeing that money. You're never going to receive a return on that. At least if you're paying towards a mortgage, you're going to get some return, But yeah, that's a whole other conversation. If we really want to get down to home ownership, like who was not paying a mortgage? It's like, that is their home. Bank doesn't own it. They have the title, they have the deed, everything, versus paying towards a mortgage. I think those numbers are different. So I see here you're working 70 hours a week and dumping my whole tax return to pay off in 3 years. Good for you. Good for you. Yeah, there are definitely tax benefits for sure. So, okay, let me, I'm going to bring this up. It says U.S. Millennials. This is from Forbes.com. This was published, I think, a little bit earlier this month. Oh, okay. Last month, August. It says home ownership and the growing chasm between aspiration and reality. Okay, so let's look into it. It says, according to estimates from the U.S. Census, by 2019, the millennial generation overtook baby boomers as the most populous generation. So basically, yeah, so they're at 72 million. Generation X is at 65 million. Baby boomers were at 71 million. So millennials, we just surpassed the boomers as far as like how much, populous we are. It says, as such, it has represented a highly appealing demographic for marketers to attract, and a generation that was certainly not to be overlooked, even if thought to be less well off than its predecessors. The generation that grew up in the shadow of two major national crises, 9/11, informing their early years, and the Great Recession, restricting hopes of getting into a solid job path immediately post-graduation, was always going to catch up at some point. So the question is, has it caught up? Have millennials caught up to previous generations? It says, we're not there yet. Here's one way of measuring that assertion. When it comes to home ownership, the most popular generation is also the one that trails older generations, with some 47.9% owning homes in 2020 versus Generation X home ownership enjoying an ownership of 69%. Baby boomers, 77.8%, and the silent generation, also 77.8%. According to the Census Bureau, in fact, home ownership has been a diminishing path with each successive generation. Now, a couple of things. Before I read on, I'm going to assume that home ownership here they're referring to people who are, in the process of basically paying a mortgage on their home. I don't think that's, it's completely paid off. I haven't verified that, but usually when I hear home ownership, I hear that in reference to people who are still in the process of paying a mortgage and paying off their home. With that said, we see that millennials are on the lowest end compared to their previous generations. Let me see. So I see here 50K foreclosure with 5-bedroom, 2-bath in a rural area. Yeah, like I said, going back to my earlier point, location. You're not getting anything out here for 50K. You're not even getting anything out here for 200,000. You're lucky to find anything out in this particular area for 600,000. I mean, you're lucky. But your average, like I said, beginning home in at least the Bay Area is $1 million. That's what it's going for right now. Okay, so moving on. It says, in order to better understand the situation, we undertook to take a closer look at the whys and wherefores of housing and home ownership in America from the vantage point of millennial-aged people. This is millennials are between the ages of 25 to 40. Okay, so it says this past spring, as it appeared we were emerging from the COVID shutdowns, we surveyed a cross-section of U.S. millennials in all three subgroups across a wide swath of geographic and living circumstances. We looked at their attitudes towards housing purchase decisions, along with the broad financial issues that might be driving those decisions. We looked at a number of factors, including when they live and where they want to live and whether it is affordable, how student and medical debt affects their ability to save for a down payment, other obstacles to credit building and savings, including stagnant wages. Stagnant wages is a real thing. That's a whole nother conversation. And rising cost of housing, their attitudes and issues with older generations, and the degree which COVID has semified their home buying plans. So it talks about basically some of the different information there. It is going to go into, let's see. Okay, so if we just go down to it. Okay, so it says where they're living is necessarily where they want to live. Fact, millennials are attracted to cities, whether for work, creative stimulation, because they grew up in. In one survey, we found that 6 out of 10 millennials currently reside in cities of at least 500,000 people or in suburban towns close to big cities. But depending on different life stage priorities, there were some key differences. The various ages and stages of millennials who live in near cities are there for different reasons. Couples and males are most likely to live in big cities, while single females tend to live in smaller cities or towns. So, I mean, that fact alone, anytime you're in a city, you're pretty much going to be paying more. I think that's generally understood. And cities do tend to attract younger people. So, that in and of itself is going to actually, of course, impede somebody's ability to get a house if they're competing in a market that's already that's just already higher. Let's see. I see. What does high value people mean? That's all up for speculation. But as it's been, popularly defined, as I think Kevin Samuels defines it, it is what a man who makes at least 6 figures for, I think, a minimum of 5 years, has an actual professional network of people who can vouch for him. And again, I'm just using his definition, and I say that because I know he's a thought leader in this space. But if you use his definition, I think it's person who has at least 5 years, 6 figures, has a professional network, and he does distinguish his high value from high earners, because there's people who make a lot of money who don't necessarily have a professional network and are a little bit messy. But he's puts high value man as far as I understand, influence, monetary influence, also social connections, and then also a reputation that precedes them. So there's an entire area that goes behind high value man, and that is how I've heard it be defined. I hear I got my first home during the 2008 recession, dirt cheap. Yeah, I know a few people who they were able to, use that for their benefit and actually maximize. I see, to all women you're broke, trust me, that will weed them out. No, that's facts. I actually, total side note, one of my good friends, he'd gotten a situation where he was locked up for some time, and he got out and he was really focused. And now he is married, I think, has 2 or 3 kids, has a home. But when he first got out, he was, he had to grind, he was struggling. So I remember he went online and was open. He was trying to do online dating, and he was like, "Oh, I'm a dishwasher." And he actually legitimately was a dishwasher for the first few years. Until he ended up getting his tax degree, or becoming like a tax person, and now has his own business. But he got out, he had to struggle. He had to wash dishes, and he said he got no kind of love. He didn't get near a message, nothing. Nobody was trying to talk to him when he was honest and saying, "Hey, I'm working towards this goal. I have a vision towards this goal, but right now I'm a dishwasher." Nobody was trying to mess with him. But like I said, now he's doing well in a different situation, and I'm sure it's a lot different. So to your earlier point, yes, sometimes, unfortunately, if you tell somebody that you're broke, then you're really going to see if they really care about you, or if it's just, something else. Okay, so moving on, because I kind of want to get to the good part of this. I think we're just kind of discussing what millennials in general are experiencing as far as trying to buy a home. So it says, okay, affordability is a key theme here. 7 out of 10 millennials who live in big cities or their suburbs across all ages and categories say that their living situation is hard or extremely hard to afford. No matter where they lived, more than half of them, 56%, found that their area hard to afford. Among those millennials we surveyed, the ability to make the leap to homeownership is a problem for the vast majority. 73% of the respondents who don't own property are making this lifestyle choice to rent. So like I said, I've mentioned this before. I can vouch to this. I know countless people, especially those who are starting families, who wanted to own a home and they just find it impossible to do so, even with, having a good job in corporate. Some of them in Silicon Valley, and many of those people that I know have relocated, to Washington, to Texas, to lower cost places so that they can, own a home, and still have a, own a home and still have a shot at the American dream, if you will. Because like I said, in certain places, Bay Area being one of them, if a starter home is $1 million, and a starter home is like, that's bare minimum. You're not even really necessarily talking about, it's going to be the most grand thing. A lot of people, even people working in solid corporate jobs, just don't necessarily have that money, especially now when you're competing with different investors. You're competing now with literally different corporations that are coming in and putting all cash offers. Your average family just can't compete with that. So I know in this area in particular, in California, or Bay Area, California, it's hard. But if you go in more rural areas, it's not as competitive. But I think, the article speaks to that. It says, okay, what about the rest? 16% live rent-free with family or friends, and 1 in 10 pay rent to live with friends or relatives in their open comments. Millennials often wrote of COVID-19 as merely the latest obstacle in a raw deal. They've been getting on affordable housing since they entered the workforce. One wrote, we feel cheated because no matter how hard we work and save, we can never get ahead. We're always 2 steps behind. This American dream is seeming more like a myth. Nearly half of all the people we talk to are unhappy living in their current location. So I I think that's interesting because, as I mentioned earlier, and for those of you who hopped on, please, thank you first of all. Please get the likes up, tag anybody on here who you think may find this interesting. We're actually talking about 2 things. My first question is, should women pursue the men that they want? Should women compete for men that they want? Should Black women compete for Black men? Should Black women compete especially for high value or high earning Black men? I'd love to hear from you. So if you want to call in, you see my link right there, StreamYard. Also, if you want to show support to this channel, you can find me on CASHAPP or VENMO, ChezCharde. Secondly, we're talking a little bit about home ownership. I did a poll yesterday just to get a pulse on everyone's feelings about home ownership, especially as it is related to millennials. So I was surprised to see that over half still had pretty positive feelings about home ownership and, it actually being a possibility. And so I just wanted to look into it a little bit more and see like what's actually happening in the market. As we see here, Forbes is reporting that a large amount of millennials feel as if they have a raw deal and feel as if it's getting harder and harder to own homes. Now, I see some of you guys in the comments, say that you've been able to have success buying homes. You think with enough, hard work, dedication, or, just focus, you can get there. But what do you think? Do any of you guys think that millennials have it harder? Like, is it just becoming more and more of a myth? Or is it still possible? Is it still possible through hard work, dedication, focus, denial to actually get a home? It doesn't matter where you're at. It says, why not buy a home in Oakland for under $500K? If you can find a home in Oakland for under $500K, please let me know. And then also understand, what's going on right now is you just have, again, a lot of people right now in this particular market are finding it tough because they're competing with corporations who are coming in with all cash offers over asking price. I know of countless situations where that's been the case. And so even if you have a couple that is saved up and you're like, okay, we have money for this property, they're now competing with different, essentially competing with different, just investor companies like that, corporations literally, who, how are you going to compete with somebody that you're asking for $500,000 and like, hey, we can give you $550,000 right here, all cash? How do you compete with that? A lot of people can't. And that is a big issue. And that's also driving up the price. And again, like I said, this is just in the Bay Area. Now, I've heard in general, just the housing market in general is just a little bit higher across all areas. But I do know you can go in like East Texas, for example, and find a home for $200,000, $300,000. That's not happening well, at least the area where I live, it's not happening. But it, in certain areas, it does happen. Okay, so we're going to continue, but case in point, we're seeing that a lot of millennials right now are just saying, this is not possible. Like, it's getting harder and harder, no matter how much we work, no matter how much we save, no matter how much we try to deny ourselves, we're just not able to get ahead. Yeah, you see, a 3,000 square foot home in Dallas, Texas can be rented out for $2,800 a month. $2,800 a month, at least where I'm living, will get you a 1-bedroom, maybe 2-bedroom, maybe a 2-bedroom. But you're right. That goes back to my earlier point. Location. Where you stay makes a huge difference. Many of my friends who have decided to leave San Francisco Bay Area to try to find a home went to Texas. Many of them went to Texas or went down south where they were able to get so much more bang for your buck. So I've heard that just Texas in general is a lot more family friendly, and it's just you're gonna be able to. You're going to have better luck finding a home, even in some of the more metropolitan or the bigger cities. It's just a lot more affordable than, like, say, New York City, things like that. Okay, so continuing. So it says, okay, so more than a third, 37% of the respondents, or the people polled, or, people in the test, especially those living in dense metropolitan areas, told us they would move to a smaller town because it would be more affordable. I mentioned that earlier. Among the youngest millennials, those that are now 25 to 30 years old, the lure of job opportunity is what draws them to big cities. But with wages stagnating, even as the median cost of a home continues to rise dramatically, the city is a potential false lure if their eventual goal is financial stability and home ownership. Yeah, like, for example, you can go, I know of situations out here where a starter engineer, I have a friend who's in HR, and she's telling me a starter engineer can make $90,000 just starting, just right out of college. They're getting paid $90,000. That seems like a ton of money. But if you're paying $90,000 living in San Francisco, and a 1-bedroom is going to pay $3,500 just for a 1-bedroom, that quickly, the cost of living and maintaining that home, it quickly adds up. So, and I think they speak to that earlier point where it's like, some people, they're finding themselves drawn to these situations, but the cost of living is such that it's hard for them to really get ahead. Here are some stats that I actually found. I found it really interesting. Yeah, I said all these companies are buying up mid-grade housing due to hybrid work, so commercial real estate rents for office spaces. Yeah, I've heard commercial real estate is taking a huge hit. They're buying up housing for rentals because the capital needs to flourish somewhere. Yeah, I've heard that. So it's like, now homeowners, or potential homeowners right now are actually, they're competing with, like, companies. They're not even necessarily just competing with couples. And at that point, if you're a company that has millions of dollars in the bank, that's a little bit different than a couple that's been saving up and may kind of have, a couple thousand here or whatever. But some people find themselves in that situation. But here's just something as far as just wages in general, because in this article, it actually talks about how some people are finding that even, between school debt and even if they're getting a good job and wages, the cost of living is actually making it hard for them to be able to buy. And so I just saw this stats recently. So it says, as of right now, 44% of American workers are considered low wage. That's just low wage, meaning they make in between $7.25 to $15 an hour. So that's 44% of Americans. That is a huge number. Waitresses, right now, there are certain states where waitresses can make as little as $2.13 an hour. You're not buying no home making $2.13 an hour. Like, and there's some weird loophole behind it, but there's different states where, because it's expected that waitresses may get tips, they are making up for that literally by, like, paying them $2.13 an hour. Like, that, to me, that is crazy. But it is happening. Now it says, as far as, like, low wage workers, that's a mix of blue collar workers, maybe workers that don't necessarily require a degree. That's a mixture of things. But essentially, for 44% of Americans, wages have gone up 3.3% since 1979. Since 1979, wages have gone up for low wage workers 3.3%. Now compare this to CEOs, different people, in like, corporations, businesses, CEOs, their average income since 1979 has gone up 940%. So low wage, it's gone up 3.3%. CEOs, it's gone up 940%. Top managers, since 1979, it has gone up 1,000% since 1979. So you have low wage since 1979, their wages have increased 3.3%. Compare that to CEOs, 940%. Top managers, 1,000%. So what we basically see is like there's certain lines of work where people are really getting rewarded and they are getting the money that they can get basically to maybe afford a cost of living or maybe afford a home. And there's also a significant amount of people who find themselves in lines of work where it's just the wages that they're making, even if they are working full time, is not enough for them to get certain assets. Now it says as far as inflation has gone up about 5%. It's gone up about 5% 5.4% since 1979. So inflation has gone up higher than the wages of 44% of Americans. And so I think this could potentially be one reason why there are some people out there. There's, some people, millennials out there who are just like, it doesn't matter how hard I work. I feel like I'm not able to catch up. Because if you find yourself in that 44% where you're a low wage worker, it's going to be a lot harder for you versus if you're like a CEO or top manager. Or they said for like for highly paid workers, like people in STEM fields, science, engineers, math, technology, their wages have gone up 63.6% since 1979. So we definitely see, like, depending upon where you fall, depending upon your job, your degree, whatever, that there is a huge difference in the amount of money being made and the opportunity that you're going to have to be able to buy. So I saw those stats and I'm like, wow, that is crazy. That is absolutely crazy. And to think that, for those 44% of Americans where inflation has happened faster than, or has risen faster than their wages, like I said, it's just more of an impact. Anyways, for those of you who have just joined, thank you. Please hit the like, sub, tag anybody on here who you think may find this interesting. We've been talking about two things. One is, should women compete for men? I had somebody call in earlier and give me their thoughts. So if anybody else wants to call in, feel free to. I have the link here. We're talking about, should women compete for men? Should women compete for the men that they want? Should they fight for the high value man? Or is the expectation that men should always fight and should always pursue women? I'd love to hear from you. If you want to call in, let me know. I have the link there. Secondly, I'm just touching a little bit on this topic I addressed earlier, which was home ownership. And, just the general idea right now around home ownership and millennials in particular. So I see, yes, women should compete. Yeah, I see most small businesses fails within the first 2 years. Facts. Yeah, absolutely. Facts. Because there are way more people who can flip burgers than manage a multinational conglomerate. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so let me finish this article. Okay, so really, we see some people here who are just like, nah, this isn't working. Some millennials who are just like, this is not working for me. It doesn't matter how hard I try. This is just hard. And of course, in big cities like New York City, San Francisco Bay Area where I live, LA, Seattle, and, or in certain spaces where it's just a high cost. Yeah, you maybe have some more discontent because just the cost of buying a home is going to be a lot higher than if you maybe go to a rural town where there's not as many people. So, okay, so in my ongoing discussion of inclusive capitalism, I should like to add in a new guideline. For most, homeownership is a cornerstone of building wealth. So being numbered within the population of property owners is key to inclusion. Yeah, the story told by the research we conducted, in addition to other research we've seen, indicates that for economic and other reasons, this generation is currently the most excluded from homeownership when viewed against older skewing demographics. Indeed, the current median age of first-time homebuyers has increased to 33, compared to 28 or 29 back in 1981. So earlier in this conversation, it talked about how if we compared millennials to previous generations, how it just seems that the rate of ownership is continuing to go down and lessen. And there may be different arguments for this. Some say it's just millennial. I've heard, oh, millennials are lazy, or millennials, they just don't work hard, or they're entitled. I've heard that. Some say, hey, it's just it's opportunity. It's just the fact that things cost a lot more. I mean, just the cost of school today have gone up exponentially. I remember my mom telling me back when she was in college, and I think she spent a couple $1,000 a semester. That same college now is costing a couple $1,000 a semester. And so, some people would argue it's just the cost of everything, the cost of schools, tuition being a lot higher, debt, medical debt, cost of home. So there's all these different thoughts, or all these different ideas as to why millennials compared to other generations are the least likely to own homes. But nevertheless, that is where we are at. It says, here is a generation that can no longer be called kids. A third of them are 35 to 40 years old. Yeah. Many have children of their own, and they have been stemified by the 2 economic tsunamis mentioned above. Add COVID to that, and the situation is even more challenging. More on that in the future column. They live in a highly prosperous nation, and while the U.S. was ranked 18th in Latum's prosperity index, it is still the wealthiest country in the world by GDP, weighing at just below 21 trillion in 2020. Our research gives us a glimpse into why. For many millennials, it's a trifecta of the cost of rent, record high student debt, and medical debt. Take away student and medical debt, and it would be a different picture. But for those individuals, the very thought of homeownership is off the table. So I mentioned this earlier. Looks like we're almost done. So it says, we have more to share on our findings, which we'll address in future columns. Many related themes emerge from our research, including the extent to which COVID has thwarted home purchasing plans, why millennials aren't saving or can't save for a down payment, the weight of student debt, and the cost of healthcare, and whether older generations have anecdotally or otherwise played a role in keeping affordable housing out of reach for millennials. Our hope is that this research can be rolled into a set of recommendations on how to solve the problem. So it looks like this article at the end of the day, is, suggesting that, as I said before, millennials are the least likely to own homes in comparison to previous generations. And, I mentioned earlier the different alarming stats that I found as far as the rate of inflation compared to, the rise of just people's wages, and how inflation has gone up more than at least 44% of American workers. So like I said, 44% of American workers, their wages have gone up 3.3% since 1979. Compare that to an inflation of about 5.4%. So that's, a little below half of people who their dollar is just going, is just stretching less and less. And then, like I said, there's other factors. Student loan is a real issue for many. I want to say the cost of schools has gone up a minimal of like 100%. I don't have the exact numbers, but it's gone up a ton. I can just remember even while I was in college, every semester it got more and more expensive. I remember my mom telling me she graduated from a university however many decades ago. And she said when she was in university, it cost a couple dozen. I think she spent like a couple dozen dollars each semester. I think it was like $60 or $70 a semester. Now, if you're to go to that same school, you're looking at $17,000, $18,000 probably a semester, like a huge difference. So of course, a lot of school debt, school loans alone, and then out of that medical debt. Unless you work in a corporation that is willing to cover your medical or significant amount of medical, most people don't have healthcare. God forbid something happens. There's money associated with just trying to keep your health together. And so, so there's all these different factors they're saying that are making it harder for millennials to actually own homes. So, I don't know. I found it interesting. I also found it interesting that we had in the poll we had a good, over 50% who felt like it was still totally possible and still totally doable. What we are seeing based upon at least based upon what Forbes mentioned is that it's certainly less possible in, more expensive areas. This obviously in the cities, it's a lot less possible. Millennials in general have a little bit more pessimistic view about it. And many of them feel like it's becoming less and less of a possibility given some of the different challenges that they've experienced in their life, along with student loan and student debt. And so, whereas, maybe a generation or two ago, home ownership was just assumed. It was more, presumed to be a part of a family's life. Now it's becoming less and less, at least according to this article, it's becoming less and less of a possibility for some, and some are really believing that it's something they can't do. But we'll see. It says my parents' generation came from the civil rights era. The generation before that were slaves. Black wealth is a problem in America. Always has been. Black wealth, I think, since slavery ended, which, I mean, even slavery ending, that's another question. But since it was legally abolished, black wealth has gone up, I think, 1.8%. It's below 2%. But this is like since the abolishment of slavery, black wealth it's not really changed that much. It's literally like I said, I think it's like 1.8, 1.5%. I mentioned this in another post, but it is, needless to say, it has not gone up very much at all. And the majority of black wealth right now is within the boomer generation. I remember, my grandmother was a sharecropper. She, hardworking woman. She didn't have, just access to certain things, just, due to Jim Crow and different things. She was a hardworking woman. She cleaned homes and stuff like that for most of her life. But even with that, even her working a low wage job, she was still able to purchase a home. Her working a low wage job, that didn't require any skill or education, she was still able to purchase a home. Now there is no way that would happen, at least where I'm at. That would never happen. And so, like I said, things are different. Is it a government reason why black wealth has not gone up, or is it because of what black people do? I think that's another conversation. But I think we certainly can't overlook things. We can't overlook some of the different things that have been done to completely make sure that black people can't get ahead. I mean, we're looking at the different cities. Tulsa, Oklahoma, for example, that was a place where black people were doing well. Bombed. Wall Street, a place where black wealth was doing well, and there was black commerce. Bombed. They had a situation out in Manhattan Beach, California, where it was black families coming together and doing well. Bombed. So we can't. I don't think, if you really want to talk about black wealth, you can't overlook the different things that have been done systematically. Redlining, you know what I mean? My husband was telling about, I can't think of the term of it, but it's basically where the way gentrification has happened. The way, eminent domain, where government will literally go and break up black communities and say, oh, we're going to build a highway here in black communities as a way to break it up. So we can't act like those things don't happen when we are actually talking about the overall wealth of Black America, because I don't believe that the reason that black wealth hasn't increased is just because black people are lazy, because, black fathers aren't in the homes, or because black women keep on making baby daddies. That's not to say that doesn't play a role in it, but we also can't overlook the different things that have been done institutionally and still continue to happen institutionally. We can't overlook that and act like it doesn't have impact, because it certainly has. Denial to certain homes, not getting access to certain homes, the Homestead Act, different things that were given to previous generations or given to previous white generations that black people didn't have. We can't act like that's not going to affect a person moving forward, because it certainly does. So I think that's a different generation, but yeah, or that's a different conversation, but yeah. So anyways, so I had 3 jobs in college and still got student loan debt. Prime example, right? Like I said, so yeah. So even the economy that we're in today, things are a little bit different than the boomer generation, the silent generation, previous generations, and And I think it's good to know that. So I think that's what I learned. That's what I took away from the article. Anyways, I know we've been here a little bit over an hour. Thank you for those of you who have hopped on. Again, if you like this one or find this useful, feel free to share it with anybody. Also, before we wrap up, just so you know, I now have channel membership. And so if you want to have more perks or have just access to more things in general, you can sign up to now become a monthly member. I'm super excited about that. Actually, let me let this go. Yeah, you can sign up to become a monthly supporter. So check it out. Check it out. You can see some of the different perks. And one of the tiers I do like consultations if you want consultations for like digital marketing, which is what my professional background was in, or cooking, femininity. Like I have consultations for a few different things. Or if you just want to have like different perks and access to or the content that I don't have on this channel, or I don't have in the public space, you can get it. So anyways, check it out. Thank you again for those of you who have hopped on. Please get the likes up if you want to show support to the channel. Also, you can find me on Cash App and Venmo, ChezCharde. So thank you so much, and we'll talk later. Bye.